Namaste. I was speaking before of Ashwatthama. I said that Ashwatthama represents attraction. And because of that, he's Amar. All the other qualities in the Duryodhana army are changed. Anger is changed to forgiveness and so on. But people have accused in the first story about Ashwatthama, where he gets Dronacharya, he beats Dronacharya by pretending that his son Ashwatthama is dead. And this is Yudhishthira, who is Dharmaraj. He's the prince of Dharma. And they accuse him of being adharmic in telling this lie about Ashwatthama, because it's an elephant that he killed, whereas actually Ashwatthama, the person, is still alive. And so many people have argued, was Yudhishthira really dharmic? Did he go against Dharma in that? You know, you've got to understand that masters, when they write, when they teach, they have fun. This is a fun story. Actually, attraction, what you have to do if you want to overcome an attraction, you have to say, play a trick with your mind. It's not lying. Just say, I don't have that attraction. You may still have it, but it's an affirmation. What Yudhishthira is saying is affirming that attraction, which is Ashwatthama, isn't really an attraction. It's just something I'll get over it in time. Affirmation is a very important part of the spiritual path. You must say that even if you have an attachment, I don't have it. You know you have it. You're not kidding yourself, but you're affirming I don't have it. When I have tried to overcome habits of one kind or another, I've said I'm free from them, even though I know I'm not. In that way, I become free. So what he's actually, Vyasa, Krishna, whichever, is actually teaching a very good thing, but he's doing it with fun. So it sounds in the story as if Yudhishthira is telling a lie. He's not at all. He's affirming what is ultimately a truth. And it's an important thing to understand in your own relations with people, that there's a difference between fact and truth. To call somebody stupid will make him, Jesus Christ said, it'll put you in danger of hellfire. That means that you'll be damaging that person's self-confidence. You'll be hurting his spiritual growth. And so, in all spiritual effort, we have to affirm that which is not, as Shakespeare said, assume a virtue though you have it not. You act that part and finally you become virtuous. But you'll never become virtuous if you keep telling yourself you're a failure, you're no good, you're evil. And so if you go to a hospital and you see a friend of yours lying there extremely ill, you don't want to say to him, how horrible you look. It may make him worse. It may even cause him finally to give up. Tell him, well, you're not looking so bad. You want to be truthful if you can. But the main thing is the affirmation. Because people are basically good, so you're affirming a truth. Even though they may not be good right now, I know there was a story in the life of St. Francis of these bandits who had been plaguing the countryside, and finally all the villagers of Assisi, the town people, rose up in anger against them, and they ran for their lives, and they came to the monastery of St. Francis. And St. Francis wasn't there, but the person he'd left in charge said, how dare you come here, evil as you are, coming to this place of God, this holy sanctuary, and so on. And they were furious at him and were about to curse him and leave when St. Francis came. And he says, brothers, why do you live the way you do? You're not happy that way. And he urged them to see themselves in a new light. And finally they ended up becoming brothers and died a very holy death. So the thing is that we must always try to emphasize the positive in people, even if they don't show it. The worst criminal actually is really seeking bliss. And if you approach him with that understanding, other people may say, what are you doing? But you're affirming the truth of his nature. So this is actually a very important teaching in the Gita about Ashwatthama, where Yudhishthira says Ashwatthama is dead. He's not telling a lie. he's affirming a truth. So, to get back to the essence here, Grandfather Bhishma then, glorious and powerful among the Kurus, anxious to encourage wavering Duryodhana, blew his conch with a mighty blast. Now this again, you've got to understand, Vyasa's having fun, but this mighty blast that he's talking about is really the breath. The breath is the conch shell of the ego, and he's encouraging Duryodhana. You see, when you go into deep meditation, your breath becomes calm. Actually, you don't even know whether up is there or there. You lose the sense of all direction, and you feel completely disoriented, and your material desires begin to slip away. You don't feel them anymore. And at that time, to encourage your material desires, to awaken those desires again, in other words, Bhishma blows his conch. And then you've all of that, with that inhalation, all the other sounds come in. We've talked about this earlier also. And it's a very wonderful truth, but it's also delightful the way Veda Vyasa tells this story, because it's also, you can see he's writing in bliss, he's having fun. And this is a reality of the spiritual path. People who don't know become very solemn and serious and see them lecturing with great thundering condemnations and so on. God's having fun in this show. He's having fun with us, and he's having fun through us. And then it says, there followed at once a great tumult, as conches, kettle drums, tabors, which are small drums, horns, sounded in a mighty uproar of support. Well, this is all the sounds of the world that come in upon you after you have finally, after you've inhaled and the energy goes back to the senses and you begin to hear through the senses again. But you know it's in sleep when the energy withdraws a little bit. If somebody calls your name, you won't even hear him. He may have to shake you before you even feel him. And so it is that in deep meditation, you withdraw the energy even more from the senses, and people can remain in that state for a long time. There's a story of a true story. It happened in Sabzi Mandi across from Delhi on the other side of the river Jamuna. And some workmen were digging there, and they suddenly found some resistance to their shovel, so they dug around it, and it turned out to be an ancient yogi. And they tried to bring him back to outward awareness and finally succeeded, and I don't know what they did for that. But when he was able to be conscious enough and talk to them, he spoke Sanskrit, and they called a Sanskrit scholar to come and talk with him. And the scholar said, it's a very ancient form of Sanskrit. I don't easily understand it, but I can make out some of it. And he said, what yuga is this? And they said, well, it's Kali Yuga. It wasn't Kali Yuga, but this is the belief in India today. Actually, it's now become Dwapara Yuga, and this happened during Dwapara. But he said Kali Yuga. And he said, oh, I'm not interested. And he left his body. Once you've come back to your body from having been so long away from it, then you can't come back into it again. And so he said, if you dig over there, you'll find the murti I used to worship. And he left his body. As I've said before, there are many strange things happening in this country. One of them is that one in, Tiruvannamalai or someplace down south, where they have two kites, two birds, they were cursed by somebody in the ancient times, and I don't remember the story either, but they come back every day, supposedly, for their meal. Well, you think of that's one of those pleasant folk tales, but the interesting thing is, it's always been two, it's never been three, it's never been one, two of them, and they come faithfully. Makes you just wonder. Well, I could tell you many stories like that, but in this story here, the awakening of the divine consciousness comes when the energy withdraws and you're no longer in this world, but you're very much aware. Those yogis who have been for even centuries, perhaps even thousands of years, who knows, in that state. They are, they're not just in a state of catalepsy, they're roaming in the astral world. They don't need their bodies, they're having a wonderful time. There was another story like that my guru told, that it was known by his father in his time, that some Maharaja was draining a pond, a lake, and they found deep in the mud under the lake 3 yogis sitting in lotus pose meditating. And the Maharaja wanted to bring them back, and he used cruel methods. He used hot pokers to bring them back. And they came back and they said, "This is very wrong that you have brought us back, but you will have to suffer for it." And very shortly afterwards, the Maharaja and his entire close family died. But my guru said that the truth was that the Divine Mother didn't want those people to find salvation selfishly for themselves. As my guru said, before you can attain liberation, you must free other people. And I asked him how many. He said 6, at least 6. So the blessings have to be spread that way. Anyway, these yogis had been underground, and the depth of their depth to which they had been covered by mud made the engineers on the project figure they had been there at least 300 years. So this is the kind of story you don't find anywhere but in India. But those great yogis had those powers. In fact, there's another interesting story since we're talking about Siddhis. Goraknath was a great saint. He lived in Gorakhpur, and perhaps the town of Gorakhpur is named after him, I don't know. But the thing is that when he was old, he lived 300 years, and he developed all the powers of yoga. And when he saw it was time for him to leave his body, he wanted to pass those powers on to another person who was worthy. And through the spiritual eye, he saw this young man, young yogi, sitting in deep meditation by the Ganges. And he materialized before him, and he announced grandly, "I am Baba Goraknath." And the young yogi, who was sort of bothered by being awakened from his meditation, said yes, and so? Well, that wasn't the answer Baba Goraknath expected, but nonetheless he said, "Look, I'm about ready to leave my body, and I see that it's time for me to go, and therefore I want to pass these powers on that I've developed, the 8 siddhis I've developed, to pass on to you." And he put them in little pebbles of mud and infused those pebbles with little balls of mud, infused them with divine power. And the thing is that the idea was that the young yogi would meditate with these in his hand, in his right hand, and absorb those powers into himself. Well, the young yogi said, "Are these mine to do with as I please?" And Goraknath said, yes, I pass them on to you. He took them and threw them into the Ganges. Goraknath says, "What have you done? It took me 300 years to develop those powers." The yogi looked at him calmly. He said, "In delusion yet, Baba Goraknath?" And suddenly Baba Goraknath understood, powers are not giving you God. You have to go beyond powers. And he gave up the desire, and then he merged in the infinite. But the desires for siddhis and so on, these are also delusion. And there's so many wonderful stories. All of them tie into the central teachings here of the Bhagavad Gita. And then it was that Madhava, Krishna, and Pandava, Arjuna, stationed in their magnificent chariot drawn by white horses, 5 in number, representing the 5 senses, blew mightily on their celestial conches. And to draw the devotee inward toward the self, celestial sounds are heard, especially in the inner right ear of cosmic Om, and of subsidiary sounds in the spinal chakras. So in the coccyx, the vibration there is the sound of a bumblebee, or it can sound sometimes as a deep, deep motor or some other deep rumbling sound. In the sacral center, or the Swadhisthana, you hear the sound of a flute, and that's why Krishna is playing the flute in the myths of Vrindavan. drawing devotees away into the forest out of Maya into the forest of divine sweetness and bliss. But that flute sound, he's pulling you upward. If you hear the inner sounds, these are not taking you downward. The sounds help to pull you upward. So I said, meditate on the sounds, meditate on the feeling of the chakra, chant Om, but also try to listen to the sounds. And then the sound also the flute sounds somewhat like a cricket sometimes, or a running brook. In the lumbar or manipura, a plucked string instrument. In the heart, dorsal or anahata, a deep gong, or alternatively, higher bell-like tones. And in the throat, the cervical or vishuddha chakra, a sound like thunder, the ocean roar, or sometimes like wind passing through pine trees. So remember, these are all sounds within you. And when the outer sounds die, you begin to hear these inner sounds. And the more you listen to those inner sounds, the more your consciousness becomes spiritualized. And you realize that you aren't this body. You aren't Duryodhana with all the material desires that is a part of. You begin to shake those things loose and to feel that your true home is in God. Indeed, that is where you belong. And we wander for a long time until we come to that deep understanding. We are children of God, not of Maya. All those wrinkles of despair and disappointment and all the troubles that the world gives you, they're not you. In yourself, you are He. Aham Brahmasmi. Joy to you.